All right, guys. So we're here today with Shane Carver for our last webinar of our series. And I want Shane to go ahead and introduce himself and tell us about how long you've been in the breed, man.
I've been in the breed since 97, 98. So been in it for a little while.
And your first dogos, where'd they come from?
They were rescue dogos. I got them from Liz Golke up in Chicago area. In fact, one of them made the Dog World magazine back then with a picture of her and a hog.
With her and a hog, your dog or Liz?
The dog that I got as a rescue.
Ah. And your primary function? What do you usually do with your dogos?
They work. They hunt.
Family dogs too? Just that, hunting, and that's all they do?
Yeah, I got a few that are family dogs, but most of them just there for hunting.
Okay. And what made you get into the breed? Like, what brought you into wanting a dogo, and what have you done as far as, did you work with other dogs before them, or have you always been in the dogos?
No, before that I had pits and American bulldogs for catch dogs for hunting. I got tired of having 50-pound earrings on hogs, so I was looking for something bigger that can handle what a hog by himself easier, and I got introduced to them and been having them ever since. I still keep a good pit around every now and then, but mostly dogos.
Okay. And so knowing that you came from pits and bulldogs and you're now in the dogos, what type of hunting do you actually do with your dogos? Like, as far as what style do you run your dogs on? Where do you usually hunt?
We hunt pasture land as well as corn and milo fields. I've run the dogs anywhere from horseback to on the ground to dumping loose to the bay. I hunt every which way I need to get the job done. I'm in it more for killing numbers of hogs than anything.
Okay. And you say you dump them. What does that mean? Do you like drive them around and then you let them all go, or do you?
Yeah, they stay in the truck and I'll drive around with the cur dogs loose. And when I get a bay, I'll turn the dogos loose to go to it for a catch.
Okay. And where else have you hunted? Have you hunted all over the United States, just Texas? Do you go out of country?
I've hunted all over Texas. I used to say have dogs will travel. I've not been to Louisiana, though. I've been offered to go over there as well as Oklahoma. I just hadn't been up there. I stay busy down here hunting.
Okay. And all over the state of Texas. So you've gone all the way up to the Panhandle, down all the way to the bottom of Texas. So you hunt everything. So you go from hill country to low mountain range to sandy area like the coast and all the way down.
Yes, I've been up by Lubbock hunting, up in the canyon country up there. I've been all around the hill country. I've been down as far as Alice and Freer, San Diego, down that way, all the way to the coast.
And when you're hunting at the coast, is it different than hunting up like towards Lubbock? Is there a big difference? Is there a minimal difference? How do you see your dogos working in between those two areas?
I haven't really had much of a difference as far as working ability, because if a dog's going to work, it'll work anywhere, is my theory and the way I treat it. Now, I have had dogs that in certain areas you needed more of a colder nosed dog that'll take a cold trail because there's less number of hogs for them to get on, versus down here where there's hogs everywhere and you really don't need a cold nosed dog as much.
And cold nosed dog is what exactly? I know that's not a dogo, so.
No, it's like a hound, something that's willing to pick up a track that's several hours to a day old.
Okay, so basically you can run with your bay dogs, run with your catch dogs, or you'll dump your catch dog in all different terrain. And so if you're up, say, in Lubbock area, is that when you use your cold nose?
Correct.
Okay, and then down south, you just let your dogos go sometimes by themselves running, or they go with a bay dog?
Both. It just all depends on where I'm hunting, how big of a place I'm hunting. If I'm hunting big acreage, I keep them up, just keep them fresh. If it's a small place that I need to catch the hogs quick and in a hurry, I'll let them run loose on the ground with cur dogs.
Okay. And as far as your style of hunting, since you do a large array and a broad spectrum of hunting, do you have a dog, or I guess a dogo, that will run the ground with a bay dog at all times, or do you always keep them up in bigger area?
I have one that I've been letting run loose the whole time. Uh, she's been coming on hard, and doing good because she's got more of a long-legged greyhound-like type body that she can carry it longer. The others are a little bit heavier, stockier, and I don't want them as wore out.
All right. And in that same aspect of, the longer legs and the stockier builds, which ones do you prefer for your terrain, specifically down in South Texas?
I like the ones that weigh about 80, 85, 90 pounds, somewhere around there. Look like a greyhound on steroids for the most part. A little bit longer leg, deep chest, wide chest, narrow waist. Some that can run and keep running, but yet have enough weight and, for lack of a better way of putting it, ass on them to hold the hog and stop it.
Okay. And when you're talking like greyhound, you're not meaning like the actual greyhound style where it's all lean all the way from head to toe. You're talking like greyhound as in the longer legs, right?
Right. Long leg, deep chest that carries out through the back to the waist. They can be a little narrower waist, but they got to have some hip muscles and everything else too.
Okay. And with that point here, in the different terrains that you run, say you're running in an area that has more thick brush, and then you deal with the mesquite thorns and cacti areas. Do you prefer the dogs that are shorter, or do you prefer a dog that's like taller?
I really don't have a preference on that. I prefer a dog that can move, that's agile, that can control his body and handle it. I've seen small dogs that short and stocky that couldn't get through there, and a big long-legged giraffe-looking thing be able to get through there easy. So it all depends on the dog more than body type to me.
Okay. And as far as they grip onto it, where exactly are they more apted to grab when you're hunting your dogs? Do you prefer just the head, or are you going to want a dog that manhandles it? I know you run with bay dogs, so do your bay dogs kind of get in also, or do you expect your dogos to always be on that hog, period, across the board?
My doggos better be there and caught, but everything I got on the ground better be caught as well. I don't believe in giving a hog a chance. Putting one or two dogs versus a hog while they get the job done, your dogs have a chance to get hurt. I believe in dog piling them to where they can control the hog better and less likely to get dogs hurt. But on that same point, too many dogs and you do get dogs hurt. So you got to find that fine line of how many dogs works for you.
Okay. And in that point of you have a lot of dogs that you run, or you don't have a lot of dogs that you run, if you're running your dogos and you are running bay dogs and you have dogos that you are running on the ground, and say you have two dogos, right? Because I know sometimes you do run with two dogos at the same time. What happens if you have a split bay and or a split catch? How do you handle that? Where do you go first? How do you determine what route you're going to take for each dog?
It depends on who's with me, who's hunting with me. A lot of times, if I can tell that the catch dogs are at the first one and it's just cur dogs at the second, I go to the catch dogs so I can get them going to the second bay. If I can tell that they're having a harder time with one hog versus other, I'll go to the one that they're having issues with. A lot of times, though, I don't run by myself. I have at least one or two other guys, so we split up. Hey, I'll send one buddy to one bay and I'll go to the other.
Do you ever hunt alone per se, or do you always have some extra hands with you?
I try to always have somebody extra with me just for safety purposes, because anything can happen out there. But I have hunted by myself before, and it doesn't bother me to go by myself. I just make sure I have the right dogs with me. And a lot of that's knowing your dogs, knowing what they can do, and taking care of business.
Okay. And as far as knowing what dogs you can take with you and knowing that you could possibly have that option of having a two catch here, one on one hog, one on another hog. If you know your dogs, what exactly are you looking for from each dog? How do you know which one can handle what? If you have a rank boar on one side and you have a small toothy sow on the other, what exactly are you going to look at to see which dog went where? Are you looking at your Garmin? Are you going by, the sound of the hog? Or are you going by what exactly?
I'm going by the sound. I don't really pay attention to the Garmin unless I'm missing a dog. I grew up hunting without any type of Garmin's or tracking systems, and we had to do it all by hearing. We still hunt like that. We just use the Garmin if we can't locate a dog or figure out where a dog's at.
Okay. And so you're in South Texas. I see you in South Texas every other time I go down there. You know how this goes, right? So we drive through where you live all the way down to the coast, and I know that you've got property that you run out there that's got cows and hogs. So when you're working with these dogs, how are you working on trash breaking them exactly? Do you start them when they're puppies? Do you start them after they've matured? Do you work on hogs first and then trash break them? Can you explain?
Everything gets started on hogs first. And it's always been my luck or my experience that if I get them on enough hogs early enough, they don't trash on hardly anything. And if they do, then I'll go out and specifically look for whatever they're trashing on and work them on that. I can't tell you the last time I've had to actually do that because I get them on enough hogs early enough to where they know that's all they better go on. And most of them have enough. If I see them going after a rabbit or a skunk or armadillo or whatever when they're running the ground, I can holler at them. They know they ain't supposed to mess with it. And that's all I've had to do. Now, I've had some that were a heck of a lot more stubborn that it took going out and looking for whatever they like to mess with in a shock collar and training on them to where they quit messing with them and they learn not to mess with it.
And do you have a problem with that? Like as far as shock collars go, do you specifically just deal with the shock collar to train them, or is there other avenues that you've also taken as far as, letting them go around something and just you're hooping and hollering at them, or do you kind of know your dogs a little bit better than I assume? So
yeah, I've hollered at them. I've used shock collars on them. I've even been messing with them on horseback, hunting horseback, and had to run down and rope one because he wouldn't leave a deer alone. So, I'd use whatever method is handy to get the job done.
Okay. And so with you down in South Texas and you travel up to the north side of Texas, what is the most detrimental to your dogs as far as health wise? Do you see a lot of issues when you go up to a different climate, like on the Panhandle, or do you see more issues when you're in the hill country, or do you see more issues when you're in South Texas with the hogs or the climate or the terrain?
The terrain is the biggest thing. Climate, if the dog's climatized out here, they're going to be good anywhere. That's why I don't believe in keeping dogs in the house, because they got to be able to work, and for them to be able to work, they got to be out in the heat and everything else. The terrain is what I run into issues with, the rocks and everything else, because you go towards the hill country and up north, it's a lot more rocks and rockier ground, and it takes out the dog's pads and cuts them up and makes them foot sore. And if they're sore-footed, they can't hunt.
Okay. And if they are running in the hill country, how would you prepare your dogs to run in the hill country, since they usually run on sandy loam in the south?
Just keep running them. I've used that tough. Well, I think it's called Tough Pad. It's a spray you can spray on their pads to toughen them up. But I haven't done that in a long time because around here we haven't been up north in a long time, so I hadn't had to worry about it.
So if you were going to go, say, here and hunt, and you're working your dogs for this area, what is the best avenue to prepare them to work here versus with you? What would you do individually?
Just run them all on the ground and let their pads start getting tough or tougher. Try to find some rougher ground, rougher terrain around here to hunt them on.
Okay. And what is the worst terrain that you feel for your dogs? What is the worst terrain to run them on or work them on?
Rocks.
Rocks? Specifically, which part of Texas, just to give an example of the type of rock? Because here in South Texas, you don't really have a whole lot of rock. You have more sandy loam, and it moves easier versus like the hill country that's got limestone, or up north where it's more of a mountain style shale.
It's the hill country with all the limestone and flint and stuff like that. You never know what you're going to hit or where they're going to get on up there.
Okay. And so working your dogs, what is your, I'm trying to think of how to ask the question without making it confusing here. So when you're working your dogs for your area and you are working them and training with them and running them as young dogs, young puppies, what are you looking for in your dogs to determine whether or not that is the dog you want to keep on your yard?
I want to see drive. I want to see them using their nose. I want to see the one that it doesn't matter whether they're sitting there getting pet or if they're out on their own. I want to see something that has a inquisitive side to them, that when I'm turning the pups loose, let them run, exercise, that they get their nose down, they're looking into stuff, or they're running and looking for stuff instead of coming up to me and wanting to be pet and everything. That's fine too, but I want something that's already got the drive to, hey, let's go check this area out and see what's over here, versus always wanting to be under your foot and pet and loved on.
Okay. And so with puppies, since we are talking about puppies and working them and kind of learning and the experimentations on what they are capable of doing and not capable of doing, what exactly do you see more out of the dogos nowadays versus when you first got into them as young dogs?
I'm seeing more lack of drive, lack of working ability, natural working ability, and there's a few lines out there that I know of. You've had a few of the people that breed them on the webinar already that I know of that has still breeds for that, but too many people are breeding more for pets and stuff like that, in my opinion now, than actual working dogs. Used to, I can get say 10 pups from different breeders and 1 out of those 10 wouldn't make it. Now it's more like 1 or 2 out of 10 that make it.
And that's just, I know things change and periodically you go through, you run through dogs. It just is what it is. That's the nature of the beast with you. But do you run through dogs now more so because of the workability, or do you run through dogs now because the hogs are learning and getting faster, quicker, stronger?
Workability for the most part. Second part is because of the hogs, but most of it is I'm finding dogs that if they get hit, they quit. They don't have the heart and drive like they used to, unless they come from certain lines or certain breeders. It's just one of those things now. That's why I haven't bought or gotten dogs from anybody else in a long time. I've just been breeding for my own use because I know what most of my stuff's going to do when it hits the ground.
Okay. And we're talking workability and capabilities of the dogs, and you talk about being hit. Is that just a once and done thing where, you put a young dog out there to learn the ropes and you take them without any experience, or do you take experience with them and work them as an in sync pack?
No, I don't take. I take a young dog with an experienced pack, and I'll lead in or send the young dog in after the older dogs have had a chance to get there. I'm not doing anything to get the dog hurt, but at the same time, I want a dog that can take a licking and keep wanting to go and go and go instead of quitting on us. Because a dog that quits is going to get you hurt and get you or your dog's either severely injured or killed.
Okay. And so you work your young dogs with your older dogs, your more experienced dogs. Do you do anything beforehand with your young dogs, or do you just kind of take them out at a certain age? Do you have a preference of age for when you take them out? How do you determine that?
I'll start showing them pigs at about 3 to 4 months of age. Little stuff that they can chase and that's not going to hurt them. I'll keep working them until about 10 and a half, 11 months old, and then I'll take them out to the woods. But they're just there learning. They're not there to be the main dogs. It's not until after they turn a year old that I put them on the ground and let them start going more with the older dogs straight out of the box instead of holding them back and taking them in after.
Okay. So what do you do as far as hunting your pack? Do you hunt all males? Do you hunt all females? Do you hunt a mix between the two? How do you prefer? What do you prefer?
I prefer a dog that works and gets the job done. I don't care if it's male or female. I mostly have males right now, but I have had females that outdid the males, and I have mixed packs. I'm not a all male or all female pack type person. I'll mix and match dogs to get jobs done depending on where I'm hunting and what I have available.
Okay. And you're mixing and matching, and I know that you run with other people. When those other people bring their dogs with them, how should your dogs react to that? What are you expecting your dogs to react like between your dogs and their dogs?
My dogs better not act up or act stupid at all. They better get down to business and not even pay attention to the other person's dog. So they're there to work and work only. If they want to have issues, then they're going to have issues with me.
Okay. And let's say we're going to talk about somebody else you're hunting with. When you take your dogs to somebody else's property, it's a new property for your dogs, and you're dumping them out and you're letting them run. Are you expecting them to get straight to work and know exactly what they're doing and where they're at, or are you expecting them to have small little hiccups of trailing off somewhere after something because they've never been there before?
They better get straight to work and do what they're there to do. I can understand if I'm with another pack, if somebody else that they haven't been with those dogs, I can understand if they kind of smell each other out, but within a few seconds, they better get to working.
Okay. And do you notice any differences between the females and the males as far as hunting ability? Do you see a male catching harder? Do they scent better? Is there no real difference? Is there anything that is different between the male and the female?
There's a big difference. Males usually start earlier and get to going faster, and a female may take a little longer, but once she gets the hang of it, she usually does better than the male. And they're usually harder and get do the job better. And the problem is finding a female that can do it. I've only come across a few that were exceptional. One of them I got from a good friend of mine, Dante Adams, and she was the base start of my bloodline or my line of dogs that I've been breeding since 97, 98, somewhere around in there.
And was that something that you have still on your yard today? Is that line?
I still have that blood in my yard right now.
And with them still in your yard right now, is it, you still see that same fire that you saw from when you first started with that line, or is it depleted, or has it gotten better through age and time?
They're still the same for the most part. I know what to expect out of the pups, but because I'm having to outsource and try to find other dogs to breed in, I'm having to be a little pickier because they still work. They work hard, but there's something missing that I'm trying to find again for my dogs. They go out and catch hogs, do the job, do what they're supposed to do, but it's hard to explain. There's just something that I'm not seeing from that I had back then, and I think a lot of it's because I'm having to outsource females that aren't quite what I want. They get the job done, they do the job, but they don't quite meet my expectations 100%.
Would you say that your expectations are extremely high for your dogs?
Yes.
And if they don't match that expectation, what typically is the number one issue that you find that doesn't match your expectation?
Lack of drive.
And is it solely the drive, or is it that they're just nonchalant about it, or is it that they have the drive but they don't have the eagerness to want to go and do it, but they can if they were forced to? Like, I guess people pleaser versus wanting to do it themselves.
But I got one. I sold him a while back. Darn good dog. He'd go out, he'd hunt. He was hard catching, but he was a one and done type dog. He'd go catch one hog, and if he didn't get on anything else, he'd lay down and go to sleep and wouldn't care. While everything else was hopped up, ready to go. They wanted to go, and that's the type of dog I want. The ones that keep wanting more and more and more and more versus lay back and sit down and go to sleep.
And do you notice that that comes out more so with, I guess, lines that are not from this area? Is that something that's from out of state, out of country, where it's harder to test that drive and the ability for the dogs? Have you noticed anything coinciding? Anyway.
No, I think it's coming from wherever and everywhere. I think a lot of it is because the breed's getting watered down more, and people are breeding for pets, and we're losing focus on what the dogs are originally bred to do. Everybody wants a dog that can be good with their kids. Yeah, we all want that, but you got to have that drive, and a dogo ain't a dogo without the drive and the fire and the want to. It just ain't the same dog. You're just getting a big white dog that's there to be a lap dog, and that's not the same. That's not what they were originally meant to do, and not what I want.
Okay. Now, if you're hunting your dogs, or somebody else is hunting their dogos, how do you feel about them hunting other animals besides hogs? If they're not in an area that's got heavy population of hogs, or they're in an area that maybe has small fractions of hogs versus what we have now, what are your feelings about working your dogs on other animals? And I'm not talking like varmints or anything like that, but are there other animals out there that they can hunt and work to show that drivability?
Cows.
Is that
I know some guys over in, I think, New Mexico and Arizona area that use them to catch cows, wild cows. I have no problems with that. I have no problems with the dogo being used for canine police dogs. I think with the right temperament and right handlers, they can excel at that. I have no problems with somebody using them for a blood trailing dog for wounded animals.
So we're talking about hunting, and if somebody is going and taking their dogs out hunting, say wild cows, it's the same concept, correct? With wild cows
Correct.
versus wild hogs?
Correct. You got to find them and catch them.
And you're expecting the same outcome, correct? They're to go in and catch that cow and not necessarily bring them down, because, that's a lot more weight than a standard hog would be, but holding them in place or keeping them in one area so that they can have somebody come in and either wrangle them, or I don't know. But
the guys I know of that use them, they run 2 or 3 dogos. They'll have their cur dog find them, bail them up. They'll send them in just like a catch dog. They'll go in, grab the bull or cow by the nose, ear, pull their head down, and hold them there until they can get in there and get a rope on them and get them tied down.
And now we're talking dogos that are here for the drivability, the urge, the want, the need to hunt. If you have a dog that really has that eagerness to want to hunt and to be worked, and you put said dog in a family situation, in a family home, what are you expecting them to act like? How are you expecting them to react to other situations? Do you expect them to be able to go from being out in the woods to being in the home with the family?
Well, they better know what that light switch is and how to turn it on and off. My kids can handle any one of my dogs from the kennel out in the woods to the dog box. If a dog's injured, one of my kids can sit there and help hold it and let me sew it up or staple it up, do whatever I got to do depending on the injury. They better not, for lack of a better way of putting it again, bite the hand that feeds them. Because if they bite the hand that feeds them, they don't exist anymore.
And with that said in point, we're talking a dog that goes out and can be stapled up or sewn up or have something done to them because they've been injured out in the field. What exactly do you bring with you when you're hunting?
I take betadine. I have several sutures, some surgical. I go to the doctor's office, or whenever I had surgeries, I got all the equipment, the hemostats and everything else that I carry with me. I've got what they call catgut string with needles to sew. I've got a staple gun. I've carried all types of stuff at one point or other, but mostly in my bag now I got all the hemostats and either catgut needle or staple gun. That's all I really carry anymore, along with the betadine and iodine.
And if you're out in the woods and something happens and you're taking your dog back to the truck to get them sutured up or stapled or cleaned up even, what exactly are you looking at as far as, are you seeing if their guts are hanging out? I know that sounds kind of vulgar and disgusting, but are you assessing and evaluating the situation before you determine if you can or can't do something to help your dogs? Or are you stitching them up, suturing them up, and if it's bad enough, you're going immediately to the vet?
Well, I've yet to have anything bad enough that I couldn't handle it myself, but for the most part, I want to get them back, get it cleaned up, get them sutured up, get them some penicillin when I get home, and if it looks like it's something that needs more advanced care, then yes, I will get them to a vet. I've had dogs that ruptured their stomach lining and everything where they had the guts poked through, and I cleaned the guts up, washed them down with that betadine and everything, pushed them back up in there, sewed it up, and they were fine. And then I've had some that I couldn't do that with, and I called the on-call vet and took them straight there. But that was once in all the years I've been doing that. I don't recommend anybody else do it just because I've been doing it as long as I have, and they're my dogs. I wouldn't do it to somebody else's dog because I'd tell them to do what they want to do.
Okay. And on that point of having something like that happen, do you put cut gear on your dogs? Do you run them with a vest? Do you run them with a cut collar? Do you run like the tracking collars? Do you run anything specific on your dogs, or it's just depending on the dog?
A lot of it depends on the dog. A young dog, I run the big 2 3/4 inch wide nylon collars and a tracking collar. I don't run a cut collar because I've seen too many dogs that if you stiffen up a dog's neck, they can't turn their head, and they can't turn their head because they can't move. Agility and ability to move is the biggest thing. I've seen dogs that won't are good hunting dogs, good catch dogs, but you put a vest on them, they won't work. So a lot of that depends on the dog. My older dogs, they get vests. They get those wide nylon collars and tracking collar. My pups, they got to earn the vest. They don't get a vest until they've earned it.
And how do they earn that vest? Just showing that they have that ability and that drive and that want and that eagerness to hunt? Or are there other
That
things that have to be accomplished?
that and I want to see them take a hit. I want to see that they may have gotten cut or and taken a little bit of punishment and abuse and not quit. I've seen dogs that they've been in a vest all their lives, never took a hit, never got cut, and then one time they do get hit hard and get cut, they quit. They won't even work a hog again. So for them to get a vest, they got to earn it for me.
And have you noticed any issues like running in Texas heat? We know that heat exhaustion is a real thing. Is there a time frame or is there a certain when you do this type thing when you run a dog in cut gear, or do you run them free and wild during the summer and you put gear on them in the winter, or what do you see yourself doing with your dogs?
I hunt February until the beginning of deer season, which is now. So depending on the heat and the humidity, depends on a lot on whether or not they get a vest or not. Most of the time they're vested, but I leave the back ends real loose to where they can get airflow and everything else in there. There's times I've stripped, it was just too hot, so I don't put a vest on them. Just because I feel like that vest is going to be more of a hindrance, and I've had dogs overheat with vests versus not, and I'd rather take a chance of a dog getting cut that's possibly survivable versus overheating and dying because I couldn't get to them fast enough or something in the vest.
Okay. Well, and now I'm going to lead into a little something different besides I know you're very good with your hunting skills, and I know you're very particular about your hunting dogs, and I know you're very selective when it comes to breeding your dogs. So when we're talking about breeding, do you breed for you? What are you exactly breeding for or to accomplish besides just that drive? Is there anything particular that you are selecting this bitch or this stud to breed down the line? Like when you're looking at the young dogs to when they're hunting to when they're ready to be bred, how do you select those bitches or those studs? What is your preference? What must they show you or do for you to prove that they're breed worthy?
Well, I've said it before. I want them to be like a Timex, take a licking and keep on ticking. I want them to be out there day in, day out, hunting, catching, working, doing everything that they're supposed to be doing, and always want more. But at the same time, when I get done with them and get home, anybody else will be able to walk up to them, pet them, touch them, feed them, handle them, and stuff like that. I want the working ability, but I also want the temperament there that isn't going to get anybody hurt. I've done guided hunts. I do guided hunts, and my clients need to be able to walk up and grab a dog and lead it out of the brush or the woods or the corn or wherever we're at for me if I need them to. So I got to have a dog that can flip that switch when and as needed.
Okay. And so how do you select your brood bitch? What makes you decide that this female is breed worthy for your yard or for somebody else's yard for that matter, if you are going to in return maybe have one too many puppies and you want to put them in another home for hunting? What exactly are you looking for out of that bitch? Is there, the drivability, the temperament, must she show you more than what you see out of your males? Is she offsetting something that maybe your male has that's incorrect? Do you have any particular wants or needs from a bitch?
To me, the female is more important than the male. She's got to have it all and excel twice as much for me. And that's where I've been having the issues because I've here lately I ain't found one that quite meets all my requirements, but I've needed replacement pups, so I've had to use what I had. They need to hunt harder and catch just as hard as the males, and have the drive to the ability of the males or a little bit more. And then when I select a male to go with her, I'm going to select one that may add to whatever she's lacking. If she's a smaller stature dog, I'll breed to a little bit taller male to try to get something in the middle of the standard height wise, versus a tall bitch with a tall male. I don't want that. I'll breed her back down to a shorter male just to get what I need with that. But the bitch has to have everything. Structure has to be everything. Form follows function, and the structure and their form better be there. Good head, good jaws, scissor bite, all that. Deep chest, wide chest. Basically, my females look like my males to the most part, with that little feminine touch is what I'm looking at, and it's hard to find one like I like lately.
Well, and I know I've seen the dogs coming off your yard, so I've seen a lot of your bitches and I've seen a lot of your males. And I've noticed with your dogs in particular, a lot of times you have shorter females, which is probably why you offset that with a taller male. Not necessarily out of standard on either or. However, you're selecting that male that's a little bit taller, a little bit thicker, but still has that high drive. And I know that you have had a bitch in the past that was on the shorter side, but she was still stocky. And you bred her up
Right.
to a male that was lanky, not necessarily real thick and beefy, but still good bone. Is there a reason behind you choosing that male that was more, not necessarily stocky, but he was more lean, and you know what I mean? Was there a reason
For
behind that?
for his size, as big as he was, height wise and everything, he was agile. He can move. He can run all day, all night. He can twist, turn, move like a cat, for lack of a better way of putting it. And she was just a stocky. The best way I could put it is he was like a long distance runner, and she was a offensive lineman. And I was crossing to hopefully get a good cross between the two to where I have everything I needed. And so far, that pup is working out like that.
And so when like I said, comes back down to the breeding of the bitch. You know, you selected that bitch because she was a good bitch. But
Right.
have you had issues with bad moms? What would you do as far as a bad mom goes? Are you going to continue to breed her, or is that genetically going to be passed down? Is that a possibility? Like what goes through your mind when you have a bad mom?
If I have a bad mom, if I breed her the first time and she doesn't do good with the pup, sometimes I chalk it up to being a young mom, inexperienced, first time, and I may give her another shot. If I give her another shot and she does the same thing, I'll never breed her again. She'll just be a hunting dog, straight for hunting. Uh, and I'll find a bitch that has the maternal instincts that I need uh, to raise the pups like I need them to be raised.
And so you have males the
Mm-hmm.
same way, only vice versa. We're not talking maternal instinct, but we're talking, dog on dog aggression style. You've got males and dogos, we know how they act. We know that sometimes you have dogs that are male on male aggression, or even female on female aggression, or vice versa of, opposite sex aggression. Do you want a dog on your yard that has that hot temperament, or do you want them to be able to be out hunting with other dogs and know that possibly when they come home they may have that hot temperament? How do you handle that? How do you decide if that male is breed worthy if you have that issue?
If I have that issue and the male is working the way it is, I'll find a female that's laid back, calm, and cross it to hopefully mellow that out. But for the most part, I can put my males all in the same box together and don't have issues. They know that I'm the boss, and if they want to start acting stupid, I want to correct them. And for the most part, I don't have that. You were there that one time when I had two males get into it in the kennel, and I hollered at them, and they separated because they knew if I had to come over there, they weren't going to like it.
Right. Well, and that's what kind of leads me to these questions of, you've got, not you personally, but you've got dogos who can be hot temperamented, who try to assert their dominance with same sex, and not in
Right.
people, but in dogs. I've got, I don't know how many times I've been around somebody that's had a small yappy dog that has decided, oh, I want to be the boss. And a big dog comes up and it's like, oh, no, you're not. So if you do, and what you do, have several different breeds on your yard, you have some gung-ho dogs that like to get kind of temperamental per se, but not temperamental.
Right.
Is that something that, when you have your dogos, do you expect them to just be like that, or do you expect them to be straight to the point, they get their business done, and they don't act like a fool? And I'm assuming
Straight to
that's how
the
it works.
point. Straight to the point. Get their business done and don't act like a fool. They want to act like a fool, they're going to have to answer to me.
Okay. And so you're not breeding your bitch to a stud that, your bitch might be hot tempered and your stud might be hot tempered. You're not going to breed those two dogs together. Am I correct in that?
For the most part, I may make that consideration if I know all I'm going to do is keep all the pups for myself, just because I know what I'm getting and what I'm going to be having, and I don't want to pass that on to somebody else that couldn't handle it.
Right.
And it's only if that male and that female complement each other in every other way other than being hot together.
Okay. So we're talking selection, your puppies that you're going through. When you are starting a young puppy off and they're, still little and you're still making that decision, how do you decide that puppy A is not right for your yard because puppy A doesn't want to venture away, and they're too, in lack of better terms, up your rear?
Yeah.
That's all they want.
If all that pup wants to do is come over there and crawl up and want to be pet and loved on and not show any interest in anything else, more than likely I'll look for a pet home for that one because it doesn't show the drive early. When I breed, I'm breeding for early drive. I want to see something start out right away and be able to be worked on. I've had dogs that didn't turn on and didn't click until they were a year old, and I don't really want those type of dogs.
You want a dog that starts early, and you want a dog
I want
that's
to
worked early, shows
correct,
the drive, and is the whole kit and caboodle, right? So
correct,
everything.
correct.
So we've got your end of the aspect and your spectrum of how you want to see things go. Have you ever had a breeding pair that has produced more pet like dogs, or have they always had that drive?
Every pup that I know of so far that I've placed with hunters has made it. I've only had one that I know of that did not make it as a hunting dog, and I think a lot of that had to do with who I placed it with. They didn't give the pup a chance. They didn't work it. They didn't mess with it. They didn't do everything like I told them to do with it. They were used to getting free or cheap pits from the pound and being able to throw them in and work it. Dogo, while you can do that, and that's what I'm breeding for, when I breed, you can't always understand that or expect that. You got to give them a little time because they think more. You got to let them think and figure it out before they go for some of them. And I think if he would have let that pup have a chance, it would have made it. In fact, they gave it to another buddy of ours, and he wound up turning it into a catch dog, though it wasn't where it should have been had it been handled and worked correctly to begin with.
So really it's more of a who's working the dog in your situation than it is that they're coming out lacking drive.
For the most part, but I can't say that's always going to happen because, genetics are a fickle thing. You never know what you're going to get.
Right. So the other side of this, to go with the breeding side, is of course temperament. And that is also going full circle into hunting. I know you had a problem in the past, and I'm going to want to have an honest answer without being too blunt. Your daughter was attacked by a dogo when she was little. Can you tell me what led up to that and the situation that it played out in?
We had hunted 2 or 3 nights before. The dog got his butt tore up. We got onto 2 big rank boars that they got head to ass to where any which way a dog came in, they met a hog head. They were fighting, and he was sore. He was a little tore up. Then I kept the kids away from him, kept them away from the kids, let him heal up. He didn't show any signs of soreness, aggravation, nothing. He was her baby, as she used to refer to him as. She'd walk out in that backyard. He'd come up to her, lay down at her feet, and let her love all over him, pet him, everything. If he was laying out there in the sun, she'd go out there and lay down, and she'd go to sleep on top of him as a pillow. And if my ex would go to get her, he'd look up at her like, don't mess with her. So he was real protective of her. About a week after he got tore up, and no cuts, no nothing, just bruised, just took a beating. She was out there petting on him, doing everything. He was loving on her, no problems. My ex stepped inside the house to get her shoes to walk out to where the kennels were, and she heard my daughter screaming bloody murder. He had turned on her when my ex had her back turned and attacked my daughter. She had to be rushed to the hospital. She received multiple surgeries. And in fact, we had to take her to the Children's Specialty Center in Houston to have plastic surgery because the dog had cut her or bit her across here, down, through the nose and lip. And the ex told me that just before that, he had growled, but she thought he was growling at the other dogs because he had a tendency to do that because he was so protective of my little girl. The other dog walked up towards him, and he just let out a low rumble. Knowing what she knows now, she wouldn't have let him around her. But hindsight's 20/20. That's why now, to this day, I do not put up with any type of dog aggression towards a human. A dog so much as growls towards me when I look at them, they're off my yard. They're not staying there. I have zero tolerance for any aggression towards a human, whether it's so much as a growl, a low rumble, or snapping. Like dogs that have gotten away with stuff and they've learned if they snap at somebody that they'll be left alone. That's not going to cut it for me in my yard ever. I will not put up with it, and they will not stay where I'm at. I had another dog given to me that was a sneak attacker. If you were looking at him, he wouldn't do anything. But as soon as you turned your back, he was jumping on you and trying to bite you. Or if you looked up away from him, he was coming at you. That dog didn't stay around very long. There's too many good-tempered dogs out there, good-natured dogs that are raised right, trained right, done right, for time to be wasted on a human aggressive type dog.
And that's the one thing that, in this breed, I'm assuming you don't want, because nobody wants that. But had that situation not happened, but maybe he just kind of growled back then, I'm assuming that would not have been the same had he not done what he had done. You might be in a different situation. So now you're saying, as in hindsight of all the situation, your daughter being attacked was your eye opener that this breed can do damage and that this is not something that we need in our breed, correct?
Correct. When I had pits and American Bulldogs, I expected it. I knew about it and everything else. I didn't expect it out of him. I knew it could happen. I knew it could happen with any dog, Chihuahua on up. But with the way he acted, I never expected him to do what he did because, like I said, he was real protective of her, overly protective of her. And then for him to do that, It was like he was plotting it or something. For lack of a better way to put it, I just can't explain it. But after that, I will not tolerate it at all.
And how old was he when that all happened? Was he a younger dog or was he an older dog? Did it just, you know,
He was 3.
he was 3. So he was still
Just
coming
turned
into
3.
himself.
Hmm.
So is that something that you see a lot of now? Is
I'm
people
seeing it.
breeding
I'm
dogs
seeing.
and aggression?
Yes, I'm seeing it all over the pages, all over the websites. Oh, my dog was so sweet, so natural, and then all of a sudden he started doing this, this, and this. The dog that bit my daughter was given to me. He came to me as a year-old dog, so I don't know how he was raised as a pup, so I can't say on that. But I do know that once I got him, I never had any issues until then, and it came as a shock for him to have done that. So that's why now, as a pup, if they show any uh, aggression tendencies as a puppy towards anybody or anyone, I'll nip it in the bud, and they keep it up. They're not going to like it. But I'm trying to keep them from turning around and doing like he did. You can curb it early for the most part, but every now and then you'll get that one that you can't. And if you can't, there's no need. There's too many dogs out there that don't have these issues to waste your time on one that's going to be a liability that could either seriously hurt or kill somebody.
And the temperament aspect of that, knowing that, it should not have human aggression, especially to the hand that feeds them. What is your reaction or your experience as far as the maternal instincts in a bitch? Do you see that they are sometimes more protective and they are more protective of their puppies or their family? Do you see that males have a tendency to protect the women over the men? Like, what do you see more of temperamental wise?
Of all the dogs I've had, I had two females, actually they were mother and daughter, that they were protective of the whole family, and especially my ex-wife and my daughter. The females tend to be more protective, especially if they have a good, strong maternal instinct to want to protect their family. The males, they're protective, but they seem to have that I can care less attitude until something happens, and then they're all over it. But the females tend to pay attention, and like I said, it's more of a maternal instinct, I want to say, type quality about them, where they're paying attention more and wanting to be the one to be there for everybody.
And so do you breed a bitch that has that maternal instinct because of that instinct where they are protective of their offsprings, protective of their families, or do you solely think that that's just kind of an added bonus, I guess, per se?
That's an added bonus for me.
Okay.
I want one that's going to hunt, work, and do what it's supposed to, and that should come naturally. That should come as an added bonus, because I've seen females that didn't have a maternal instinct that were great hunters, but they couldn't raise a pup to save their life either. So you got to find that fine line balance between them.
And if you had a bitch that just didn't give a rat's what about her puppies, and you had to hand feed a puppy, or puppies plural, would you continue to keep that bitch on your yard, or would you get rid of her?
If she hunted and did what she's supposed to do, I'd keep her and hunt her and work her, but I would never breed her again. She can stay in the pack and hunt and work, but I ain't going to touch her as far as breeding. It's not worth it. There's no point in it.
Right. And so with you just being a hunter, you really don't show a whole lot, but how do you select the right looks for your dogs? Like, when you're choosing your stud and your bitch to breed, is there a certain physique about each that really draws you to that dog? Like, is it the medium bone? Is it a thinner bone? Is it a thicker bone? Is it a big wide head? Is it, you know, the eye set? Is it the body shape? Is it the structure of the rear? Is it the, you know, what exactly draws you to select that dog outside of the hunting?
I want them to fit within the standards. I want them to follow the standards. I want them to be like that. But I want a dog with good bone, heavy bone, something that if it takes a hit, it's not going to break the bone. I've seen dogs real thin, fine bone, light bone that get legs broke because they can't take a hit. Uh, I want a good wide head. I want a good wide eye set. I want their bite to be a scissors bite. I want a wide, deep chest, long length of ribs, because lung and heart capacity, the wider and deeper the chest and longer the ribs, they should have bigger lung capacity and make room, because without that, they can't run and won't have the stamina. And then I like something with a little bit of leg under it, so that way they can carry their speed.
So you're really just saying, like, you like them to fit the standard, but you also like them to fit your pack style and your hunting style.
Right.
So when you selected your bitch and you selected your stud and you get your offsprings, and I know you're a hunter, so sometimes you may not really care about, oh, they've got a spot here or they got a spot there, but at the same time, say you want to sell a dog to somebody like me, who I do go out in a show ring, you know, what exactly would I be looking for that is, I want a dog that hunts, I want a dog that shows, you know? Should I be looking at a dog from your line that has, you know, these great structures and the great ribs and the lung capacity and everything else? Or should I be kind of looking at, you know, I've got an eye patch here, you know, Dakota, she's got her patch on her eye, but she hunts. You know, am I looking at stuff like that when I'm looking at this breed from you? Is that what you're expecting? Is the dog that meets that standard that, okay, yeah, they've got an eye spot, but nothing else, correct? You don't want a dog to breed, and yes, you do hunt, and yes, you do agree with standards, and yes, you do try to stick to those standards, but say you got a butt patch, everything else is perfect about the dog. And you know that's not true because imperfections happen outside of the eyesight. But are you going to breed a dog with a butt patch and an eye spot or whatever to an all white dog or even another spotted dog on your yard? Or will you continue to stick with the standards of that 10% of the head and less?
I'll stick to the standards of 10% of the head or less as far as that goes. But if that pup with that butt patch was an exceptional hunting dog, was exceptional conformationally wise and everything other than that spot, and if I knew that pup those pups weren't going to leave my yard or go anywhere, I would consider that, because I'm breeding for hunting, for working ability. But they wouldn't go anywhere else. They'd stay in my yard and be for me to use. But if I want to sell it to somebody else, or give it to somebody else, because I give dogs away at times, no, I wouldn't breed it for them.
Okay. So the other portion of this is, what is proven to you? When is a dogo proven that makes you say that is a breed-worthy dog, that is a perfect dog, that is a proven dog? And I know what you're going to say because you're laughing.
Well, technically, a proven dog or a finished dog is a dog that's dead to me, because a dog will always learn something and can keep going. But for the most part, I'm looking at 3 to 4 year old dogs that have been hunting since they were a year old, taking lickings, taking beatings, gotten cut, and still have the drive and want to keep going and not give up, not quit. That's the type of dog that I'm looking for. I've seen people that, oh yeah, the dog works, a year, 2 years old, they breed it and then it quits working or something. I want a dog that's been out there doing its time to prove itself before I'll consider breeding it.
And if you were to ever show your dogs and they were show worthy, breed worthy, like the whole nine, fits all the standards, what would you tell a judge that was looking over your dogs as far as, you know, they're looking at that dog? Would you expect them to penalize your dog for a scar or a canine missing, or what would you expect a judge to be looking for or looking at as far as this breed?
Better be looking at the confirmation and whether it fits standards. And to me, if a dog hunts and works and it's got the scars and maybe a missing canine or a chipped tooth or something like that, because it's a working dog and does make it earn its living catching hogs and working, that should be a added bonus versus dog that just shows. You know, to me, if a dog works and has the temperament to work and everything else and has the confirmation to where it should win the show, but they want to knock it for a scar or chipped tooth or missing canine or something because it's a working dog, that ain't right. The working dog should always place over just a pet show dog, to me.
Right. And like all of this is just in your honest opinions, and you're usually a very straightforward person in your opinions. And that's probably why we get along so well. But, you know, seeing that some of these judges see a dog that has the pigment showing through, you know, and these dogs get penalized for that. I know on your yard you have dogs that are heavily pigmented, and I'm not referring to the actual fur, but pigmentation. You know, do you see a lot of dogs out there nowadays that are showing up in the show ring that are
Hot shot on the other side. Sorry.
you're good? Are you seeing a lot of dogs out there now that are lacking pigmentation or are heavy in pigmentation, or are they getting too spotty, or what else?
I'm seeing a lack of pigmentation. I'm seeing where a lot of people are complaining because their dog does start getting pigmentation on the skin, and but they're supposed to be pure white. No. Uh, to me, you want pigmentation. You want that because it helps the dogs. Uh, they don't. All mine have heavy pigmentation in the skin. None of it touches the hair, other than if it's a pirate. But they're heavily pigmented, and I don't have the issues with sunburn and everything else like I'm seeing a lot of people claiming to have now because of that pigmentation. I've only had one dog that in the litters I've had that has come out deaf, and it was only one pup, and it stayed on my yard, and it had no pigmentation at all anywhere, where everything else has had some pigmentation even as early as a pup. The little spot here or there, a little freckling here or there. And as they got older, they got more. And that pup was the only deaf pup I've ever had on my yard in all these years, and it remained there on the yard.
And with this breed, we do deal with deafness, and I know it happens. What would you say if somebody said, well, I've never had a deaf puppy and I've been in the breed for 30 years?
They're a liar.
And that's just solely based on what, your experience, or is that based off of, you know, tons of different people and what you've seen within the breed itself?
A little bit of both. No matter how much you cross dogs, the breed in itself, every dog has a genetic identifier, I'm sure, to throw unilat or a full deaf. So for them to say I've never had nothing but perfect hearing dogs, they're a liar. Because all my dogs are full hearing, and this pup, it was a second litter or third litter out of that jip, because it was going to be her last litter before I retired her, because I only breed them twice, maybe 3 times, depending on the dog. And she threw a deaf pup. Everything else has always been full hearing. And the male was the same male I used. I crossed him on another female and didn't have any deaf pups, but I only crossed him one more time before I lost him. So I can't say which if it was the male or the female that was throwing it, but those two combined together threw a deaf pup, and I would never make that cross again because of that.
Well, and in that same aspect of making crosses, you've bred enough times in your life. Do you make the same cross multiple times with your dogs, or do you always change out the jip with the stud?
It depends on what I'm looking for. If I've bred the same male to the same female twice before, because all the pups turned out just like I wanted them, and they all stayed on my yard, with the exception of two, and I gave them to friends, and they wanted more. I've had guys request the same cross before, same litter mates, but I try not to do that too often, because if I'm keeping them, I want to be able to turn around and use them for breeding to each other too. And while I don't mind line breeding, I'm not going to get that tight.
And so you've got XYZ breed on your yard from this breeder, and you've got ABC from your yard that you've bred, and you're crossing those two genetically. Have you ever had the blue eyes come out?
No, I have yet to have a blue eye. I've had them come out real light, like a amber colored, but I've yet to have a blue eye.
And if you ever do happen to have a blue eye, would you ever breed those two dogs again?
No, I never make that cross again because it's a disqualification.
All right.
That it'd be they'd be lucky if I even use them again.
And you say that, why exactly?
Because I don't know which one has the genetics that's causing it. Together they threw it, but I don't know which one has the stronger gene in it that's going to cause it if I use it with a different male or different female. So I may not use those at all again.
And I would assume that's the same. Is that the same with the deaf one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't breed those two together again, and in fact, I never bred that female again. So, like I said, I don't know which one. Genetics are genetics, and I don't understand them all, like some of the people that have been on before, but I just don't take that chance.
Okay. Well, that is pretty much all we're going to talk about. I'm going to say one little thing as far as, if anybody has questions for Shane, now would be the time to ask them. And, while we're waiting on that, can you tell me exactly what you think rustic means for the dogo?
Do what now?
What exactly does rustic mean for the dogo? Like when somebody says that dogo is rustic, what would you take that as? Have you ever heard that saying before?
I've never heard that saying before, but to me, that would mean that it goes back to the original type, like what the brothers had on their yards to begin with.
Well, let's see. I think we are pretty much good. I will say there is a question on here that somebody did ask about a dog getting bored in the woods. I don't know if it's regarding a temperament issue or not, but it was basically.
If they're pups, wait. Give them a chance. I don't know how old they're talking about with this, but if it's a young pup, if they're getting bored, put them up and put them in the truck until you get on something. Boredom leads to trashing. Trashing leads to issues. That's why if I got a pup on the ground, or if I'm taking pups, they stay in the truck with me until we get on something. And then I take them out and lead them to the bay and then cut them loose when they show interest and they're wanting to get to it. It's not until after they've been on a bunch of hogs that I'll start letting them run loose in the woods, because by that time they have an idea of what we're looking for. And I only let them run loose at certain properties where I know odds of getting on a hog are very high.
Okay. And we are looking basically, he said they were 18 months old. So 18-month-old dogo getting bored out in the woods is this something that will correct itself, or is this something that maybe we shouldn't be breeding, or what exactly?
At 18 months old, that dog should be working and doing everything it needs to be doing. If it's getting bored, it means that they're not getting on enough hogs early enough, soon enough. It needs to get it on whatever they're hunting faster and stuff. And if it still shows boredom, then it just doesn't have the drive to work like it needs to me. But that's my opinion.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like talking about, the male that's on our yard that we've taken with you. He gets bored easily and he has to be corrected, but he's a damn fine hunting dog. So it just
Right.
really depends, right?
Well, that goes back to a dog that I had. I called him Duke. He worked good as a 3-4 month old pup, and then he lost interest. I kept him around because I did everything, because he was given to me by a friend of mine. I did everything I could. Finally, about a little over a year, that light switch came back on, and he started working. No issues. We had a good time. We hunted him, and he's still hunting. Okay, when he stops looking and starts playing, that means that you haven't gotten him on anything, and it's time to put him up, because he's going to start getting in trouble. He's going to start trashing and looking for something other than your prey of choice.
Well, I think that looks like it's everybody's questions are done with. Yes, that would be all of them, because he said, okay, thank you. So if nobody else has any questions, I wanted to thank Shane Carver again for coming on and talking to us and giving us your experience and, giving us a little insight. I appreciate it. Quit poking the freaking screen. So
Right.
if there's anything that you could say to a novice hunter, Shane, that wanted to get into the breed and or hunting, what would you tell them?
Don't.
Seriously, Shane Carver. If they wanted to start learning, where would you point them? What would you tell them?
If they wanted to start learning, find somebody that's an experienced hunter. Don't worry about taking your own dogs out. Get with them, learn, go with them, help them. For lack of a better way of putting it, be their helper, be there. Ask questions, but listen. And then once you earn their respect and when they tell you that you can bring a dog, then bring your dog. But make sure it's trash broke if you haven't hunted it before. Work with your dogs to make sure they got a handle on them. Whatever that person tells you happens. If you bring a dog with me, I'm going to tell you. If your dog acts up, I'm going to treat it like it's one of mine. And if you have an issue with me treating it like it's one of mine, then don't bring a dog.
Well, good thing I don't mind you treating my dogs like they're yours.
So,
well,
and that's where we're at.
And that's where we're at. And that is some solid information since, we first took our dogs out. We worked with you. You gave us some helpful tips and I appreciate it. So I appreciate everything and you have a great rest of the day. Go round up some bulls.
All right. You too.
Bye. All right. Bye.